The book of Ezekiel, chapter 40. In the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th of the month, in the 14th year after the city was taken, on that same day the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me there. In the visions of God he brought me into the land of Israel, and set me on a very high mountain, and on it to the south there was a structure like a city. So he brought me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze, with a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he was standing in the gateway. The man said to me, Son of man, see with your eyes, hear with your ears, and give attention to all that I am going to show you, for you have been brought here in order to show it to you. Declare to the house of Israel all that you see. And behold, there was a wall on the outside of the temple all around, and in the man's hand was a measuring rod of 6 cubits, each of which was a cubit and a handbreadth. So he measured the thickness of the wall 1 rod, and the height 1 rod. Then he went to the gate which faced east, went up its steps, and measured the threshold of the gate 1 rod in width, and the other threshold was 1 rod in width. The guard-room was 1 rod long and 1 rod wide, and there were 5 cubits between the guard-rooms. And the threshold of the gate by the porch of the gate facing inward was 1 rod. Then he measured the porch of the gate facing inward 1 rod. He measured the porch of the gate 8 cubits, and its side pillars 2 cubits, and the porch of the gate was faced inward. The guard-rooms of the gate toward the east numbered 3 on each side. The 3 of them had the same measurement. The side pillars also had the same measurement on each side. And he measured the width of the gateway 10 cubits, and the length of the gate 13 cubits. There was a barrier wall 1 cubit wide in front of the guard-rooms on each side, and the guard-rooms were 6 cubits square on each side. He measured the gate from the roof of the one guard-room to the roof of the other, a width of 25 cubits from one door to the door opposite. He made the side pillars 60 cubits high. The gate extended round about to the side pillar of the courtyard. From the front of the entrance gate to the front of the inner porch of the gate was 50 cubits. There were shuttered windows looking toward the guard-rooms, and toward their side pillars within the gate all around, and likewise for the porches. And there were windows all around inside, and on each side pillar were palm tree ornaments. Then he brought me into the outer court, and behold, there were chambers, and a pavement made for the court all around. 30 chambers faced the pavement. The pavement, that is, the lower pavement, was by the side of the gates, corresponding to the length of the gates. Then he measured the width from the front of the lower gate to the front of the exterior of the inner court, 100 cubits on the east and on the north. As for the gate of the outer court which faced the north, he measured its length and its width. It had 3 guard-rooms on each side, and its side pillars and its porches had the same measurement as the first gate. Its length was 50 cubits, and the width 25 cubits. Its windows and its porches and its palm tree ornaments had the same measurements as the gate which faced toward the east, and it was reached by 7 steps, and its porch was in front of them. The inner court had a gate opposite the gate on the north as well as the gate on the east, and he measured 100 cubits from gate to gate. Then he led me toward the south, and behold, there was a gate toward the south. And he measured its side pillars and its porches according to those same measurements. The gate and its porches had windows all around like those other windows. The length was 50 cubits, and the width 25 cubits. There were 7 steps going up to it, and its porches were in front of them, and it had palm tree ornaments on its side pillars, 1 on each side. The inner court had a gate toward the south, and he measured from gate to gate toward the south 100 cubits. Then he brought me to the inner court by the south gate, and he measured the south gate according to those same measurements. Its guard-rooms also, its side pillars, and its porches were according to those same measurements. And the gate and its porches had windows all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. There were porches all around, 25 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. Its porches were toward the outer court, and palm tree ornaments were on its side pillars, and its stairway had 8 steps. He brought me into the inner court toward the east, and he measured the gate according to those same measurements. Its guard-rooms also, its side pillars, and its porches were according to those same measurements. And the gate and its porches had windows all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its porches were toward the outer court, and palm tree ornaments were on its side pillars on each side, and its stairway had 8 steps. Then he brought me to the north gate, and he measured it according to those same measurements, with its guard rooms, its side pillars, and its porches. And the gate had windows all around. The length was 50 cubits, and the width 25 cubits. Its side pillars were toward the outer court, and palm tree ornaments were on its side pillars on each side, and its stairway had 8 steps. A chamber with its doorway was by the side pillars at the gates. There they rinsed the burnt offering. In the porch of the gate were 2 tables on each side, on which to slaughter the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. On the outer side, as one went up to the gateway toward the north, were 2 tables, and on the other side of the porch of the gate were 2 tables. 4 tables were on each side next to the gate, or 8 tables on which they slaughter sacrifices. For the burnt offering there were 4 tables of hewn stone, 1.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1 cubit high, on which they lay the instruments with which they slaughter the burnt offering and the sacrifice. The double hooks, 1 handbreadth in length, were installed in the house all around, and on the table was the flesh of the offering. From the outside to the inner gate were chambers for the singers in the inner court, one of which was at the side of the north gate, with its front toward the south, and one at the side of the south gate facing toward the north. He said to me, "This is the chamber which faces toward the south, intended for the priests who keep charge of the temple, but the chamber which faces toward the north is for the priests who keep charge of the altar. These are the sons of Zadok, who from the sons of Levi come near to the Lord to minister to him." He measured the court, a perfect square, 100 cubits long and 100 cubits wide, and the altar was in front of the temple. Then he brought me to the porch of the temple, and measured each side pillar of the porch, 5 cubits on each side, and the width of the gate was 3 cubits on each side. The length of the porch was 20 cubits, and the width 11 cubits. And at the stairway by which it was ascended were columns belonging to the side pillars, 1 on each side. Chapter 41. Then he brought me to the nave, and measured the side pillars. 6 cubits wide on each side was the width of the side pillar. The width of the entrance was 10 cubits, and the sides of the entrance were 5 cubits on each side. And he measured the length of the nave, 40 cubits, and the width 20 cubits. Then he went inside and measured each pillar of the doorway 2 cubits, and the doorway 6 cubits high, and the width of the doorway 7 cubits. He measured its length 20 cubits, and the width 20 cubits before the nave, and he said to me, "This is the most holy place." Then he measured the wall of the temple 6 cubits, and the width of the side chambers 4 cubits all around, about the house on every side. The side chambers were in 3 stories, one above another, and 30 in each story. And the side chambers extended to the wall which stood on their inward side all around, that they might be fastened, and not be fastened into the wall of the temple itself. The side chambers surrounding the temple were wider at each successive story. Because the structure surrounding the temple went upward by stages on all sides of the temple, therefore the width of the temple increased as it went higher, and thus one went up from the lowest story to the highest by way of the second story. I saw also that the house had a raised platform all around. The foundations of the side chambers were a full rod of 6 long cubits in height. The thickness of the outer wall of the side chambers was 5 cubits, but the free space between the side chambers belonging to the temple and the outer chambers was 20 cubits in width all around the temple on every side. The doorways of the side chambers toward the free space consisted of 1 doorway toward the north, and another doorway toward the south, and the width of the free space was 5 cubits all around. The building that was in front of the separate area at the side toward the west was 70 cubits wide, and the wall of the building was 5 cubits thick all around, and its length was 90 cubits. Then he measured the temple, 100 cubits long. The separate area with the building and its walls were also 100 cubits long. Also the width of the front of the temple and that of the separate areas along the east side totaled 100 cubits. He measured the length of the building along the front of the separate area behind it with a gallery on each side, 100 cubits. He also measured the inner nave and the porches of the court, the thresholds, the latticed windows, and the galleries round about their 3 stories, opposite the threshold, were panelled with wood all around, and from the ground to the windows, but the windows were covered, over the entrance and to the inner house, and on the outside, and on all the wall all around, inside and outside, by measurement. It was carved with cherubim and palm trees, and a palm tree was between cherub, and every cherub had 2 faces, a man's face toward the palm tree on one side, and a young lion's face toward the palm tree on the other side. They were carved on all the house all around. From the ground to above the entrance, cherubim and palm trees were carved, as well as on the wall of the nave. The doorposts of the nave were square. As for the front of the sanctuary, the appearance of one doorpost was like that of the other. The altar was of wood, 3 cubits high, and its length 2 cubits. Its corners, its base, and its sides were of wood. And he said to me, This is the table that is before the Lord. The nave and the sanctuary each had a double door. Each of the doors had 2 leaves, 2 swinging leaves, 2 leaves for one door, and 2 leaves for the other. Also there were carved on them, on the doors of the nave, cherubim and palm trees, like those carved on the walls, and there was a threshold of wood on the front of the porch outside. There were latticed windows and palm trees on one side and on the other, on the sides of the porch. Thus were the side chambers of the house and the thresholds.